Hi, this is Katessa Harkey, and you're watching Obstinateas. So, I want to talk about this graphic that's been making its way around Facebook. When I got to it, it had more than 5,000 views, and I saw it coming in from a source that surprised me. It was someone, it's not our business here to call out or shame anyone, but I do want to talk about what's wrong with this graphic. And this graphic has to do with MRAs and men's rights activists. We've come to think of that term as applying to only the sort of internet troll version of what this group is or represents. And it is always, unfortunately, the loudest voices in the room that get to decide what the vast majority of everyone else thinks of you in radical community, and that is unfortunate. But let's just take a look at this graphic for a minute. So up at the top we see it says literal feces. Let's ignore literal for a minute and just go with feces. This is mudslinging, and it basically says so right up front. And that's not entirely unfair, given that in the spaces that MRAs inhabit, they tend to fling a lot of that sort of thing around themselves. Not all of them, because not all of them are there. But that is what we tend to see, and so it's reasonable to think that this sort of graphic can be aimed and directed at just those sorts of people who are the sorts of people to fling mud in the first place. And if we look to the left and to the right, we see it's basically reiterations of the same thing. We see sun-baked garbage, and on the other side we see crybabies. Now, crybabies is kind of funny because that's one of the things that they basically say about our side of the aisle. A lot of the time is that we simper and complain about things that are not actually reasonable to be complaining about. That we dramatize suffering. And sometimes that's a fair accusation, I have to say. But all of those things are basically just saying words at people. They're just slinging insults around. And if people want to troll, troll's gonna troll. What difference does it make? It makes a difference when we get down into the last quadrant. And in the last quadrant we have the word rapists. Now, that word is unlike all of the other words. All of the other words are insults that might apply to anyone for any reason that I might think you are a bad person, or I don't like you, or you're not worth something. I might just throw this as an insult at you. Rapist implies a crime. And not just any crime, but one of the most heinous crimes that someone can commit. This is a very serious accusation. And while it is true that there are members of this total group who call themselves men's rights activists, who of late have taken it upon themselves to defend rape as an idea, who have actually organized groups to come together, or tried to anyway, to organize groups to come together to legalize rape on private property. That didn't go over at all for them. But they tried nonetheless. That's basically the king of the MRA trolls we're talking about here, that Roosh fellow. And like I said, it didn't actually pan. Nevertheless, this word is on here. Now, not all men's rights activists are rapists. Obviously, not every single one of them has gone out and actually committed this heinous act. Why you would include this word on an infographic that's essentially meant as a joke, I don't know. I can't comprehend why we would tolerate rape jokes. Let me say that again. I can't comprehend why we would not just tolerate, but propagate a rape joke. Intended offensively, sure, against a group of people that we don't like, certainly, but that doesn't matter. It's still a rape joke. And what do we say about rape jokes? Right. We can't have it both ways. We can't both say to people that we're not going to have rape jokes as an acceptable thing in society because they're damaging to people, and then make them ourselves. Secondly, there are plenty of people who are working on men's rights issues who are not rapists, who are in fact very good men, and who really do not deserve to have this label thrown at them in this manner. For example, there are people who fall under this umbrella term who have a particular interest in stopping circumcision as a practice in the United States, who are very concerned, and their primary concern in being involved with the men's rights movement is to prevent and ultimately stop the genital mutilation of male babies en masse in the U.S. Our side has tried to say that those people should just call themselves feminists. Well, we haven't done a very good job. Let me say that again. Feminists have not done a very good job on this issue. We've managed to raise enough cane to go into other countries and pressure other countries that are practicing female genital mutilation to cease the practice. The practice is completely forbidden in the United States. Even cultural defenses are not allowed. But this is a regular practice carried out upon male babies in our hospitals. And not only that, but when women around us say that they just don't like uncut men, that they just don't want to touch a cock that hasn't had this horrific thing done to it. Why do we tolerate that? Why do we sit back and say, well, that's just a matter of preference, or, have you really given it a try, or God forbid we start talking about people's hygiene? We're the ones who are reinforcing this idea that men should be cut in this way, as women at large. So, when men's rights activists say that they actually do need to have their own movement to protect them from these sorts of things that happen only to men. They don't happen to women. It's not my issue, per se. I mean, I can stand in solidarity. But there are real issues in society that affect men that don't affect women. And feminism has not done a very good job of addressing those issues. And so, for us, when men in our lives come to us and say, I feel like I need a movement for me that helps protect me, that looks after my issues and the social justice issues that affect me, why would we look at them and say, you are the only group that doesn't deserve to have its own ability to organize to deal with those issues, especially since feminism at large, our organizing energy at large, has not gone to proportionately addressing those issues. There is valid room for men's rights activism, and when we reinforce the idea that all men's rights activists are just like those internet trolls, all we're doing is breeding more disenfranchised, angry men. if we're not willing to say, yes, of course, you deserve your own movement, and yes, of course, we'll be your allies, and we will support you in any way we can to help you get those rights that you need and deserve, we can shut up. And when we let things like this pass by our stream, or God's forbid we like them, if we don't speak up and say something, anything, about what it is that we're seeing here, that every man now think about what I just said, every man who's working on circumcision issues, who doesn't consider himself a feminist, we are saying is a men's rights activist who, according to this infographic, is a rapist. And that's just one example, and we could go down the list of specific men's rights issues. We're contributing to that body of internet trolldom that has become the men's rights movement now, as far as most people are concerned. That's a problem. There needs to be healthy and safe spaces for men to come together and address their issues. And we can stay out of it, just like we ask them to stay out of spaces that are meant for us to address our issues. And when I say us, I'm speaking as a person who is a genderqueer person. I don't actually identify as a man or as a woman, but I was born into a standard issue female body. The other problem with this graphic and its use of the term rapist in that way is that it deeply undermines the seriousness with which that word should be taken in every case where it's used. We really want people to actually know that when we're using a term like that, when we're making an accusation like that, that we would only ever make it seriously. I'm a consent activist, and this bothers me, because rape, it isn't a joke.